Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. Wars filled with hatred, war and poverty. Wake up all the builders, it's time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we all lend a hand. The only thing we have to do is put it in our mind. Surely things will work out. They do it every time. Yeah. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. Na 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 na. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah. Just you and me. Oh, just you and me. I wish y'all believe that. Good morning. Good afternoon. Whatever the side of the diaspora that you're on. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I really wish that we would wake up, because, you know, we so caught up in this party affiliation that the corporations are actually playing us for fools. And if the people would shut this shit down, I heard they having a shutdown day May 5th. The same way we did Target, we gotta do something, y'all. We have to take our power back. We the people. It ain't we the corporations, even though they trying to make it that, because America is a corporation. But we the people still run this bitch. We have to. We have to. We can't give up on ourselves. Okay? Second of all, as long as they keep us fighting over who's a Democrat, who's a Republican, and we're never gonna fix this shit. If you look at somebody and you see he's an all-out racist, not a person just telling the truth, and some people gonna try to say, well, truth is subjective. No, it ain't. The truth is the truth. And you're going to have to be able to deal with the truth in order to break this cycle that's been going on for years and years and years, that the rich class found a way to trick everybody out their coins. But what I can say, what has happened in the last 40 years has been incredible. A lot of y'all can't even say that because you don't even know what was going on 40 years ago. But I can tell you 40 years ago, homes were affordable. I can tell you 40 years ago, we didn't have to work 5 jobs to come up with one paycheck. I was just talking to my brother the other day, and we were talking about how a gallon of gas was 39 cents in 1973. Think about that. And we paid it. Okay, I mean, I'm just saying. And I look at what the people today are missing out on and never took a part of, because they got to take their country back. They got comfortable. Every generation got to fight. Not just the baby boomers or the Generation Jones, who I am a part of. uh, everybody had to do and has to do their part. And right now, it's out of hand that we all got to work together. Otherwise, we're going to lose this country. We're going to lose it. And it's a lost cause. Because they gonna steal all the wealth out of it and then move around. You see what the current administration is doing. It's no secret. But somebody said it plain to me, as plain as it can get. And I'd like for her to share it with you, okay? Bear with me.
Are going to white supreme themselves into extinction. And it's a canon event. None of us should even think about interfering. And it's so funny to watch, not funny haha, but funny situationally, because they routinely underestimate non-white people and non-white nations, which is exactly what we're seeing in Iran right now. The thing is, when you're racist, you can't operate in racism and logic at the same time. You have to choose one or the other. So if you choose to operate under this delusion that white people are the only ones with motion, that America isn't real and the European nations are the only ones with motion, you're going to chronically and fatally underestimate your brown and black opponents. And that's exactly what's happening right now. This type of arrogance, the type of arrogance that led BBNet and that dumpster fire in the White House to attack Iran with no just cause, is the same. It's this type of arrogance that is born out of white imperialism. And white imperialism, said another way, is just European bullying. And they have just been bullying people for so long with just, unmatched levels of violence and barbarism that they've deluded themselves into thinking is strength, that now they've gotten high on their own supply and they legitimately feel like they're the smartest and the strongest and the most strategic in the room when they couldn't be further from the truth.
This black woman left no crumbs. He came out to explain it deeply.
Now y'all heard that, right? Y'all heard that. Because it can't be further from the truth. It cannot be. That's what it's called, though. Bullying. Let's go.
As they flatten isn't real. And I just hope that when it comes time for America to pay her just due, people know where to direct their anger, because it wasn't us. And you already know what I mean by us. But this white imperialism, this European imperialism, that insatiable greed that these people have for other people's shit, has been the cause of most of the wars throughout history. It was definitely the cause of World War I and World War II. Right now we're talking about World War I in chapter 14 of the People's History of the United States, titled War is the Health of the State. And do you know who called out the whiteness of it all when it first started? W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois. Oh my God, I wish I could have met him. If they asked me who I could sit and have lunch with, dead or alive, if I had to pick 5 people, W.E.B. Du Bois would be one of those people. The second person would be that John Curaçao CIA guy. I would love to have lunch with him. But W.E.B. Du Bois pointed out in 1915 in an article that he wrote for Atlantic Monthly, the real reason behind the First World War, and I'll give you a hint. The real reason was white people wanting shit that's not theirs. Again. That's all they ever do. And so, in order to set the scene for where this world war came from, I'm just going to read you directly from the book. And what I want is for you to think about how this connects to what we see in 2026. Because keep in mind, if you're thinking to yourself, well, how is this Iranian conflict in any way similar to imperialism? How does imperialism play into this at all? Girl, isn't real wants everything. They want to basically decimate the entire Muslim world so they can turn it into a Jewish state. If that's not imperialism, I don't know what is. But I shouldn't say Jewish. I should say Zionist, right? A Zionist state. No shade to the Jews. So, let's get into what role imperialism played in World War I. Now, before I read all of this, and by all of this, it's like less than a page. Before I read all of this, I want to point out 3 themes to keep in mind as I read through this. The first theme is imperialism, because all of these white nations are fighting over like control of black and brown nations. So it's like a vampire fight. Which one of us is going to get to suck the blood from this African country? So it's imperialism. The second thing that he's pointing out is American hypocrisy. And the third thing that he's pointing out is the ingenious evil of capitalism in uniting exploiter, rich minority, and exploited white poors in a common goal of dominating the blacks and the browns. All right, let's get to it. Howard Zinn writes, a remarkably perceptive article on the nature of the First World War appeared in May 1915 in the Atlantic Monthly. Written by W.E.B. Du Bois, it was titled The African Roots of War. It was a war for empire, of which the struggle between Germany and the Allies over Africa was both symbol and reality. Quote from Du Bois, in a very real sense, Africa is a prime cause of this terrible overturning of civilization which we have lived to see, end quote. Africa, Du Bois said, is the land of the 20th century because of the gold and diamonds of South Africa, the cocoa of Angola and Nigeria, the rubber and ivory of the Congo, the palm oil of the West Coast. Du Bois saw more than that. He was writing several years before Lenin's imperialism, which noted the new possibility of giving the working class of the imperial country a share of the loot. The loot, because these motherfuckers were stealing. He pointed to the paradox of greater democracy in America alongside increased aristocracy and hatred toward darker races. He explained the paradox by the fact that the white working man has been asked to share the spoil of exploiting, quote, chinks and niggers. Yes, the average citizen of England, France, Germany, the United States had a higher standard of living than before. But, to quote Du Bois, whence comes this new wealth? Meaning, where is this new wealth coming from? It comes primarily from the darker nations of the world, Asia and Africa, South and Central America, the West Indies, and the islands of the South Seas. Du Bois saw the ingenuity of capitalism in uniting exploiter, rich minority, and exploited, poor whites, creating a safety valve for explosive class conflict. It is no, quote, it is no longer simply the merchant quote, it is no longer simply the merchant prince or the aristocratic monopoly or even the employing class that is exploiting the world. It is the nation, a new democratic nation composed of united capital and labor. The United States fitted that idea of Du Bois. American capitalism needed international rivalry and periodic war to create an artificial community of interest between rich and poor, supplanting the genuine community of interest among the poor that showed itself in sporadic movements. So let's just annotate this part of the book real quick. Zinn writes that it was a war for empire, of which the struggle between Germany and the Allies over Africa was both symbol and reality. What else is a struggle for empire in modern day? I'll give you a second. Okay. What are the Zionists trying to do right now? Create an empire. How are they trying to create this empire? By going into darker nations and taking over what they already have and then calling it theirs. This is what colonizers do. This is what it looks like when history starts to repeat itself. Same shit, different day. Same motivations, different faces. Same story, different country. And so if at the beginning of the 20th century, they were all trying to walk down on Africa so that they could get the gold and diamonds of South Africa, the cocoa of Angola and Nigeria, the rubber and ivory of the Congo, the palm oil of the West Coast, what exactly are they trying to get from Iran right now? Oil. What exactly have they been trying to get from the Palestinians this entire time, this entire 80 years? Land. When I tell you these motherfucking European colonizers never change tactics, and that's their problem. Because since they never change tactics, they've become what? Predictable. And what happens when your enemy is both predictable and extremely arrogant? They lose. And then when Howard Zinn says that Du Bois was pointing to the paradox of greater democracy in America alongside increased aristocracy and hatred toward darker races, What this entire Make America Great Again shtick that these crazy ass white people have been on for 10 years has been operating under the delusion that we're improving our democracy alongside increased aristocracy. The rich have just gotten richer, and hatred toward darker races. Racism has just gotten more blatant in this country. And then Du Bois goes on to say that he explained the paradox by the fact that the white working man has been asked to share the spoil of exploiting chinks and niggers. Excuse the slurs, this is literally what is written in this book. Okay, how does that relate? How does that mirror what's going on right now? Just use your brain and think. I'm not going to think for you. Okay, I want to point out how incredibly courageous it is that Du Bois, a black man, had the courage, had the fucking balls on him to call out the hypocrisy of white supremacy in 1915. People struggle to do that today because you're all a bunch of bitches. Not you all, but you know who I mean. You know who I'm talking about. But Du Bois was talking his shit 111 years ago when it was much harder to do so. I just wanted to give him his flowers there. But he goes on to say, Howard Zinn goes on to write of Du Bois, the average citizen of England, France, Germany, and the United States had a higher standard of living than they did before. Sure, how did they achieve this higher standard of living? Let's pull at that thread a little bit more. Where did all of this wealth come from? When you go to Paris, when you go to Portugal, when you go to London, and you look around and you see all of these gorgeous buildings, where did they get the money to build these buildings? Where is all of this money coming from to build this? But then when you go to the places where they're sourcing this wealth from, Swedish chocolate is not grown in Sweden. I'll give you one guess where it's grown, and everybody there looks like me. But the people there that actually are producing the chocolate don't have any motherfucking money. Why? Because Sweden is taking all of the money. He's pointing out these hypocrisies of imperialism. And he's also pointing out when he says, when Howard Zinn writes, Du Bois saw the ingenuity of capitalism in uniting exploiter and exploited, creating a safety valve for explosive class conflict. What he's saying is these rich white minorities that are at the very top of the capitalist pyramid know that they can always count on poor white people to unite in their drive and in their promotion of capitalism and use those poor white people against everybody else by giving those poor white people a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the profit that comes from exploiting black and brown people. And this is how capital, the rich minority, and labor, the poor whites, become united under American capitalism. And it's crazy. And so Du Bois is saying it is no longer simply the merchant prince. It is no longer simply the aristocratic monopoly like what we see in Bridgerton. It is no longer simply the employing class. It's no longer even like the landlords and the managers and like the mill owners who are exploiting the working people. The further we get into the 20th century, you're going to see that capitalism becomes a lot more complicated. And this is why I love the show The Good Place, because it really highlights how all of these different systems that impact modern life, they make morality so complicated that none of us are fully innocent in it. I'm a black woman, a double minority, and I'm not even fully innocent from what America has done to these other nations because I benefit from the capital that comes from exploiting these black and brown countries. And so you think like that's such a mind fuck, especially when you're black or brown yourself, but you're also an American. So you're not quite as disadvantaged as a black or brown person in Brazil or a black and brown person in Ghana. I don't know these countries like that. If I'm insulting Brazil and Ghana, let me know and tell me to shut the fuck up. I'm just throwing shit out there. I'm just trying to find black and brown countries. Don't come for me. But Congo, that's a better one. I feel like Congo's really oppressed right now, so that's a better one. But anyway, and then lastly, Howard Zinn writes, the United States fits this idea of united labor and capital because American capitalism needs international rivalry and periodic war to create an artificial community of interest between rich and poor. I want to pull at that a little bit. Okay. I have been talking about this for at least the past like 3 chapters, and every time I talk about it, I still feel like I'm not getting through to people because the reason that American capitalism thrives on division is because the cure to capitalism is community. The cure to capitalism is everybody getting along and everybody uniting, which is why the American capitalist machine is constantly starting shit all over the world. Because if they can start shit, then they can sell people weapons, and they make billions of dollars selling people weapons. And that's just on an international stage. If they can keep starting shit in a domestic way, for instance, between black people and white people, then they can continue to convince white people that their biggest off is black people and not, in fact, the rich minority that it actually is. And how do they benefit from this? They keep white people keeping the system going while they go out here and do some more fuck shit. White people are literally, like, particularly the poor white people, and nowadays, the middle class white people are born and bred to be like guard dogs for the rich minority at the top of the capitalist pyramid, and they like it that way, because as long as they have all of these guard dogs on the ground level stopping the rest of us from storming the Capitol, they can keep on going with their vampire ball of bullshit. And so all of these societal ingredients still exist today. This American hypocrisy, the complications of capitalism and how capitalism thrive on racism, and, like, you know, the imperialism of white countries fighting over control of black and brown countries. Like, all of these ingredients still exist today, and those are the similarities between what's happening now and the First World War. But the difference, and this is a really, really important difference, is that most people, unlike in 1915, are not falling for the bullshit anymore. And people falling for the bullshit is an extremely important point. And that's why they spent so much money and so much energy propagandizing people during the First World War. Propaganda doesn't work as well as it used to. And the reason for that is not only because of social media, but there's just a higher level of consciousness among the collective these days. So we don't fall for the same tactics. We're not at each other's throats. We can all look around and see exactly where all of this hostility is coming from. The majority of us can all look around and see exactly where this hostility is coming from, and that's a major wrench in their plans for a world war, because you can't pull off a world war if the world doesn't want a war. Let's go to the next part.
You can't pull off a war if the whole world doesn't want a war. So, you know what? I'm going to take a page out of Hillary Clinton's book. We are going to have to call these rabid dogs to heel, because all along it's been them, not us. They got y'all running around here with your heads down, self-hate, feeling just bad about yourself, especially if you're black. A lot of y'all, because I see it reflected in the behavior, a lot of it, the trauma that was inflicted, but it's not your fault. And as you seen this sister, and matter of fact, I want to give a shout out, because the name of that book is War is the Health of the State. Okay? And it's a real good book. Very, very good. Very informative. And if you want to know who that is talking, you can go find her at Mel's Book Club. That's at Mel's Book Club. And she's a very brilliant young people. I love to see young people, because every generation got to pay its price. Y'all just need us for a little anchoring. But y'all got it, because y'all got the energy. I'm talking to my young people out here now. And it's time for y'all to start taking center stage and breaking down this bullshit. Because y'all smart. Y'all came up in a different level. Even though you may not have as many things as your parents. Maybe the accessibility to housing and job, a good job. When I was coming up, I just thinking about it. 16, 17 years old, if you went and worked in a brewery, you was making $17 an hour. Can you imagine how long that money stretched us? We sent our kids. Some people sent their kids to college. on money from A.O. Smith. We didn't have to have a full scholarship in order to attend college. A lot of our parents could pay for it. And I really want to see that world again. Because I think it's very unfair for y'all to be working 20,000 jobs and have less than your parents. And what gives me hope is when I think about Target. Not Jamal Bryant, but when I think about Target and what black people did as mobilizing. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if the people say, I've had enough, and shut all this shit down? Not just black people, but all of them. The ones that, like I always say, if it's a pile of snakes, you don't know which one is a good snake and a bad snake. But you have to align yourself with the garden snakes, like the Viola Lusos and the Schwerners and the John Browns. You have to align yourself with that type of energy as people. And then the rest of them, if they don't get on board, then okay, oh well. But if you got enough, you can change the society. You can change the way we doing things. Yeah, they had their foothold in our economy for a while. But the last 40 years I've seen it has really gotten worse, I would say. And we can't get it all the way back. But I know one thing, can't keep going forward the way it is. And Donald Trump and BB, they are going to crash this society totally, where there is no recovery. Where there is no recovery. So the question becomes for me, did man make God or did God make man? And that is a good question. Because a lot of things that we don't do as people who feel compassion in our heart, we feel like it'd be against God to do some things. When how do we really know that's what it is? The games that they playing on us. If they lied to us about everything else. So we got to come up from that stinking thinking. Anyway, I thought this was a very, very good telling conversation that Mel had about, white supremacy and how we've got here and how we got to get out. Okay. So with that being said, if you like what you hear, tell me how you think. What you think? Think I'm out of order? If you listen to the video, because I know it was a little long, but I like to make long videos because I like to teach. I'm not here to shock, trying to get you here to just hear just a little bit and hope that it was beneficial to you. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.